Welcome to this webinar. We're going to begin in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to make sure that we got it all started so everybody can join. So we'll begin promptly in 2 minutes. So just hang tight. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join us on this webinar. We've got some good stuff around Conquest. It's easy to get a little bit out of control with some of your spend, and there's a lot of upside to it, and we're going to get into both of those topics. So before we begin, we're using GoToWebinar for this webinar today. And you should have a panel on the right-hand side, and there should be a drop-down for questions and one for chat. Feel free to enter any insight that you have in either one of these windows. We'll get to as many questions as we can after the broadcast is over. So yeah, make sure you get your Conquest questions triggered in. We're joined today by Courtney Evans. She's the VP of Marketing Product for Affinitiv. So she oversees the product suite performance, the development, and new product launches. In her time with Affinitiv, she's served in several roles, one of them being the Director of Client Care and a member of the Dealer Product Service team. She's got expertise in process efficiencies, platform development, contract development, client relations, and she has experience with major OEM programs. And she has 10 years of automotive and leadership experience. So without further ado, let's turn the time over to Courtney and learn a little bit more about maximizing and optimizing your Conquest.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. As mentioned, I'm Courtney Evans, and I work for Affinitiv. And for those of you who are just getting to know who Affinitiv is, we provide marketing and software solutions to over 5,000 dealerships nationwide. We work with many major manufacturers in the country, and we're really excited to take some of the time to share a bit of knowledge and insight into what we've gained through our experiences. So Affinitiv's monthly revenue rescue webinar series features topics addressing common challenges within your dealership that may be leaving revenue on the table. So we do this every month. We hope that you guys will join in after this one, but we did want to share some insight into a big topic that's in the industry today, and that's data. And how can we use data to help us elevate our marketing messages, and how do we use it to its fullest capabilities? Untapped resources, new customers. So, you know, data is really becoming a buzzword everywhere. It's not just automotive, but it's very, you know, it's becoming more and more of a topic of discussion within automotive. So most people understand that, you know, your DMS or your CRM are one source that have a lot of great data behind them, but there's a lot of other data sources out there. Another, you know, fun statistic is that only about 12% of the data that you have within your dealership is actually being used effectively. So that leaves, over 80% of data that you currently own, you currently have, not being used and not being, analyzed to maximize your ROI. So one of the things that you can really do is start looking at this Conquest data or, third-party data, any data that you need to bring into your dealership to do a few things. I think a lot of people, when they hear Conquest or third-party data, they instantly think about, how do I get new customers in? And it's not always about, getting new customers in. It's also learning about new insights into your existing database and understanding your customers better so that you can market to them effectively. So a DMS, CRM, wherever you're housing your data today, it's a great list to start with on who to market to, but you can use this third-party data on how to market to those individuals and maximize your ROI. Data helps us to get a better idea into our unique consumers. So, as we are saying, data is a buzzword in the industry. It's a buzzword everywhere we are. And it kind of gets, data gets a bad rap. You constantly hear, where is it coming from? Who is using it? What are they using it for? How did they get it? But in reality, it's really just a way of giving value to our habits and, actionable items. So there's a lot of misconceptions. I think a lot of people hear the data and they instantly think of those, negative things. And there's a lot of misconceptions built around that. So some of them, just in the automotive world, is relying on your first party data alone. So taking a name, an address, a phone, or whatnot, and using that to, blanket marketing. There's so many other sources, and new sources are being added daily, that you're really only, touching the peak of the iceberg if you're relying on your first party data only. So then another misconception is, that data is only going to give you that customer record. Yes, it's going to give you a name, an address, a phone number, but there's a lot of other things that data can tell you. Data can tell you, a marketing area. It can tell you what your consumer habits are. And we're going to dive into that more. And the other misconception is, that it's a variable in everything that we do or nothing that we do. If we're not using the data, we're missing out. But if we're using it as the only framework, we're also missing. There's a lot of knowledge in, all of us, all of the people at the dealerships in automotive that should be used. Data is not going to tell us everything that we need to know. So, my favorite example is, Memorial Day was this past weekend, and that is an event that triggers a lot of, car sales or, events. And the event alone is telling us that we need to do marketing. You're going to know which customers are best to come into your dealership. You're going to know, how you want to run that, event. But we could choose to, just blast everyone in our DMS, or we could, start using some of that third-party data and creating, triggered, targeted campaigns that help us bring in the right people at the right time. So, kind of understanding this, as I mentioned, there's always going to be more data, and the wealth of data that exists is expansive. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. There's different sources to get it from. There's different ways of even looking at the data that you already have. So I kind of have to break it down, for those who have those misconceptions on data, into three big pools. And that's your vehicle data. So that's the data that is on your car. So a lot of what's going to come out of your CRM or DMS. It's, was the car purchased new or used? Was it leased? What's the mileage? What's the make or model on that car? That's going to tell you a lot of information about the car and allow you to market to, triggered events on the car.
Excuse me,
then
Courtney?
Yeah.
Courtney, is there a slide presentation that we should be seeing along with this, or is this mostly going to be via audio? We're just seeing an overview screen, and we've got a couple people asking if there are slides that they're going to be able to see.
Oh, I'm so it should be a slide. Let me check on that.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Just want to make sure that I've done this before myself where I've been rolling and people weren't seeing anything. So I want to make sure.
Is it showing it yet?
Right now we're seeing just an overview slide that says revenue rescue, and it hasn't changed.
Let me try doing it this way.
Okay.
Does that work?
Still says the revenue rescue screen. I'm not seeing anything change. And actually, Courtney, sorry for the technical difficulty here. Actually, I don't show you as being on as I show you being on a phone call, but I don't show you being on the computer. I don't know if there's an internet issue on your end or you need to log back in, but it's not showing that you're.
Let me try logging back in.
Okay. Hey, I see you now.
Should be back in now.
I see you now. Let's see. Let's see what happens when I do this. Okay, I just gave you presenter. Hey, look at that. Okay, we're back up.
So sorry for the technical. That's what happens when you're doing these from, client visits. Never count on the internet.
We're good. We're good. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back in right where I left off. Sorry that you guys did not see what I was showing, but honestly, you didn't miss much. The content was the most important. So kind of going back to, there's so many different sources of data, and there's, to break it down and make it more understandable, I like to look at it as three different ones. We have the vehicle data, which I explained, which is anything that is about your car, new, used, was it leased, the mileage on it, make, model, and it gives you things that you can do triggered, campaigns to, or, any type of campaign, but it's going to be based on the vehicle. Then you can bring in some of the customer data. So this could be anything about, the demographics, the, income of the customer, any life events, have they recently gotten married or had a child that would warrant, service or sales of a vehicle. And then to make, that customer data even more interesting, you can layer in some shopper data. So this is stuff that we can pull from outside sources that shows if a customer has recently visited an IRS, some of their, soft credit scores, are they in equity to buy a new vehicle? What are their habits? And it's kind of interesting that social media is one of the top sources for data in everything that we do. And about every 3.4 million searches are done on the internet per second. So if we're not looking at that, how are we adequately, learning our customers and then tailoring our marketing to them? So I always like to look at it, as, that every customer or consumer is unique and has data that falls into each of these three buckets. So all of these are going to affect the way in which the customer responds to marketing or how they shop. And if we're not considering this, we're not giving them the experience that they so desire to have. A lot of people say that they hate having their car serviced, but we want to make it more tailored to them so they feel that we're doing a good job. I would say that most customers have thought about one or two of these questions and how their marketing applies to each. But have you really ever considered creating a customer profile that meets the needs of each customer and looks at them in a unique fashion so that you can tailor the marketing directly to them? So just a few things, and these are, kind of in broad categories, but how far are they located from the dealership? Are they actively searching online? Did he or she just have a child or get married? What are the other vehicles that are in their garage? And the reason I'm telling you that this is so important is because the data is really telling us that this is important. Data suggests that customers care more about the experience that they receive, and they want that feel-good vibe and the idea that they are somewhat special. 7 out of 10, Americans say that they've spent more money to do a business with a company that they feel understands their needs. It's the same, topic with offers. People are not always, driven by the coupons that we give them or the incentives. Sometimes it's just about that we're timely and relevant and that we make them feel like we understand. 70% of marketing fails to accurately target the right customer. And thinking back to that Memorial Day campaign, if we're just sending an e-blast to our entire DMS, there's probably a lot of customers in there that have already serviced, already bought, not in the market, or maybe are not in town that weekend. So then the other part of this is more customers than not, so that they love tailored service. They want to get a piece that they feel meets their needs, not just everyone's. So this is why it is so important to use the data available and to create this experience for your customers. Your marketing doesn't just have to be a piece of direct mail or an email. It really contributes to the overall experience that the customer has when they visit you. Creating marketing that meets the need of each consumer. So how do we do this? You can't answer all these questions alone with what you already have. You have to start bringing in some new data sources and supplementing what you have. You're going to hear me use the word layer. I'm not saying disregard the data that you already have, but bringing in other sources to better understand your customer base and the customers that are not servicing at your dealership is going to help you, grow your ROI, be a dealership that, clients routinely come back to, and it's going to help you in the long run. So taking data we already have, layering in that new data, tells you more about the customers you already have. And it's hard to do on your own. And this is where we have to, bring in partners or bring in systems that help us leverage, analytics. So by doing this, we can really focus on creating relevant, timely, and personalized marketing messages for each of our unique audiences. You'll remember on the last slide that you can now see, 70% of marketing fails to target the right customer. So taking, that Memorial Day campaign that we talked about in the beginning, who are we going to send it to? Yes, it is relevant to everyone. Everyone celebrates, Memorial Day. I know I got the day off. I'm happy, it's another day to myself, but, that's only one factor. You really need to consider, who needs to be in, who's due for service, and, who might need to buy a new car. So take it, from like this. You have your customer profile, and if we're just leveraging data from your DMS or CRM or any source that you currently have, it's going to answer a few questions. It's going to tell you, if they, did they purchase a warranty with their vehicle? It's going to tell you how far away they are located from the dealership if they put in an accurate address. And it's also going to tell you if they purchased new or used vehicle based on if they were at your store. But there's only certain marketing that you can deploy that's relevant and timely based on this information. And there's a lot of gaps that you could be missing. It's a lot of that, vehicle data that we talked about. So, taking that this customer lives 8 miles away from the dealership, what if you could tell that they've already serviced at an independent repair facility? What could you, based on the address that you have, could you tell if they have a summer house that they're, at during this time period? So then I'm going to, layer in some of that third-party data that I was talking about. This is the data outside of what we already know. It's going to give you a more accurate depiction of the customer and tell you more about them and how to market to them. So taking that same customer who is 8 miles away, I can see that they leased that car 2 years ago. So why not, serve them some communications that tell them about, incentives on early lease end or, the new vehicles that are available. Again, 8 miles away, I can see that they haven't been to an independent repair facility. So why aren't they coming back to us? Maybe we need to, leverage a more, proactive offer in that time span. There's a, big talking about looking at customers' consumer habits. If they visit, luxury restaurants and organic supermarkets, they might not be so concerned about the price or the discount off what they're getting. It might just be more about the education and the warmth and the experience that they get, time and time again. So looking into this, and I'm going to kind of show you that, it's one thing to apply the third-party data, but it's another thing to, strategically use it to market to your customers differently, segment the audiences, and make sure that, what marketing applies for one doesn't apply for all. So take, for instance, customer profile A. We have someone that's an enthusiast. They have, 3 luxury cars in their garage. Usually when we see an enthusiast, they want the latest and the greatest thing out there. They're more likely to service at the dealership, and they understand the value of, OEM parts and service. You can see, through this, that they're actively searching online for the new, year models. This is the perfect time that instead of, sending them a service piece, we start putting out some, service to Conquest pieces. You can see that he's never, serviced at an independent repair facility through, purchasing some of that third-party data that looks at their online habits. This is someone that I wouldn't send, an offer to. I would be more strategic in, educational pieces, always promoting the next best thing out there. But this is another customer that services at the same dealership and has completely different habits. They did not purchase a warranty for their vehicle. They have no other vehicles in the garage that can tell us, are they, loyal to the brand, or are they looking for a good deal? They're not looking anywhere online, but we can tell that they got married. So maybe that says if they have no other vehicle in the garage, they need a new vehicle, and we can start marketing to that. You can also tell that, she moved 32 miles away from the dealership. If I'm looking at myself, I probably would not drive 32 miles away. And I can see that she has visited an independent repair facility or a facility outside of my own dealership, and start, strategically saying, maybe this is not the best customers to market to. There are going to be customers in your database that are just not worth, the marketing dollars. And we need to be strategic with it. So then we have our last and final customer that I want to look at. And that's, one that is completely separate than the other two. This customer purchased a new car a year ago and is not returned for service. So first question is, why have they not returned for service? A lot of, when they purchase new, they're going to get X amount of service visits included in that purchase. So I look more into their customer habits, the customer profile. And I see that the track history shows that they like to stay local. Everything is about convenience for this customer. They work from home. They go to the nearest, independent repair facility possible. They're also going to local restaurants, local supermarkets. And I can, say that I need to tailor the marketing based on this outside Conquest data to them, showing them what are the benefits of coming to my dealership. What am I going to get out of, maybe driving past a few IRFs in the process of getting to the dealership, and it's going to contribute to the experience that I have. So those are just a few ways that each customer is unique, and these are pretty simple marketing techniques that we can use if we start layering in, some of the data and looking at our customers as, rather than an audience, more as an individual. And it's not that each customer receives a different piece of marketing. It's more that we're segmenting it out and we have a better understanding of them. If this data is available and we can use this to elevate the experience that they gain, you're losing by not doing it. I mean, some of the true benefits that we have by layering in different data sets is, and analyzing that data. It's not just about bringing it in. It's about truly understanding the customer and what we can do to help them. You're more likely to understand the client's habits, needs, and what's relevant. So taking the budget and maximizing it. Creating that timely communication and marketing. So we're going to target our audiences way better. We're not going to, blast communications out. It's going to be, if your customer receives the piece of, a direct mail piece, it was meant to go to them. There's something in the data that tells us that it is relevant. And then at the end of the day, we're going to better serve our customers. We're going to be able to aid in the experience. We're going to keep them coming back. We're going to keep them feeling that we truly understand them and their consumer habits, and no one else can replicate that. So, as in everything that we do, I always stress an omni-channel approach. What marketing works for one person doesn't work for another. Different consumers respond to different marketing through different channels. So third-party data can also help us here. It can be layered in to give us better insights into how our consumers respond and to what channels. Instead of throwing all of our budget to sending a direct mail piece, which we all know can get pretty costly with the cost of, paper and postage, we can start strategically deploying campaigns in a means in which the customer is going to see. So, take, for instance, the customer that might have multiple residences and has that summer home. We don't necessarily want to send them a direct mail piece that they're not going to see for 6 months. But through third-party data, we can kind of start to see that, maybe they're on social media. Social media is something that comes with us everywhere we go. And I know, I'm pretty, connected to my phone at all times. And I notice when, ads start popping up. It's really easy to go straight from an ad right into my web browser. Me, for instance, I delete all my emails. I get way too many emails in my inbox, but I am likely to respond to, a direct mail piece if it's relevant to me. It's going to be something that comes in a mailbox that has less and less, items in it because everyone's doing auto bill pay. And it's going to be that shiny object that, makes me think, is it time for me to get my car service? So as you can see, we kind of, we've done a lot of case studies. We've looked at a lot of different strategies behind the omni-channel. The more channels you add, the better your response rate. And there's a lot of strategy behind, not giving the customer every channel, but doing it in a way that meets their needs and you can target it to them. So in my example, if I was doing my marketing, I would not send myself an email because my delete rate would be 100%. But I'm more likely, if they spend the money marketing to me through social media to respond. So just to give, a backbone to what I'm saying, we've, done a lot of case studies, and this was one that truly stuck out. It's a great example of a lot of, the initiatives that we stress in everything that we do. And, you should be thinking about in that next marketing campaign that you do. This was something that went in 2 drops, and that's strategic too, because you deploy to a higher number of individuals the first time around. And then we would, either scrub the DMS out of people who came in, or we would look at some people that we saw they didn't open the email, and maybe change the way we market to them. We did do direct mail and email for this. And I believe for the first drop, we did both. And then we targeted more in the first drop and got more aggressive with the offers. And, we used a targeted audience. We did 50% inactive, which talks to your DMS, audience that you already have. And then we did 50% conquest. So that's bringing outside people that might be due for service, currently servicing an independent repair facility. This targeted the conquest audience specifically looked at 2004 or newer models. They didn't belong to another dealership of the same OEM, and they had service at an independent repair facility. So taking that strategy and really applying it, yes, the cost of this campaign was over $5,000. It was, some people might be going, oh my gosh, that's outrageous for one campaign. But we weren't just blanketing the marketing. We were using what data told us, bringing in our audiences, really segmenting them so that, they were getting a message that was meaningful to them. And we sent this to, just over 6,000 records, and the dealership saw, about $230,000 in ROI. So using the third-party data to become more targeted may incur higher costs. I'm not going to lie about that up front, but in the result, it's going to give you a bigger payday and a happier customer who feels that this marketing was meant for them. It's also telling you that, we can't always look at the dollar for dollar, and there's something to say about the overall experience, and that everything that we, say we do and we do through our marketing contributes to that. So in conclusion, I really want to stress that each individual consumer is unique, and your marketing really should be too. Our goal is in everything that we do, whether it's, first-party data or that third-party conquest data that we bring in, is really to be timely, relevant, and customized to each dealer. And, using that to leverage the experience that, using the data to leverage in a way that is going to elevate the experience and the marketing that we put out there. So the best way of doing this is really just by, using all resources out there, using every tool that's at your hands, and third-party data is a great way of doing this and better understanding your consumer pool that you have. So kind of want to thank you for, listening through that. I'm sorry for the visual headache that was at the beginning, and I'm glad we solved it. I hope that you guys will join us for another episode of Revenue Rescue through Affinitiv, and hopefully you learned something from this.
Well, thank you very much, Courtney. We've got a few questions that I'd like to tee up for you. The first one from Jim is this third-party data that you're talking about analyzing and using. How current is it? Did you get that question? No, I'm not hearing anything, Courtney.
Back.
Did we lose you? Okay, cool.
I am back.
So how current is that data?
How current is which data? The data
the third-party data that you're using to analyze and assess some of the marketing campaigns.
If you're using it effectively, it should be continuously being updated. Any data that is, a day old is old data. hopefully in the life of a car, third-party data that we bring in on a, weekly, monthly basis is going to be relevant, but we always stress getting, the newest data out there. It's continuously changing. It's always going to be evolving.
Right. Well, you make a good case. One of the problems with, I think, most dealerships DMS is they have multiple unique identifiers for customers, based on, spelling of names or whatever. Anytime there's a human interaction with data for the DMS, you run the risk of it getting corrupted. And with this third party stuff, it should be cleaner. Do you have any tips for or how clean the data is, and what dealers should be doing to their own data to make sure that they can, cut down on on their DMS data being corrupted?
Absolutely. At the very minimal level of what you can be doing with this third-party data, it's appending what you already have. I always, whenever I think about what I want to do for, my customers or my clients, I always try to think back to myself. And I know for a fact that when I fill out, my customer information at a dealership, I usually put, I don't have a landline phone, so I put my home phone as my cell phone. Well, your marketing completely changes with that. There's a lot of different things you can do with a home phone than you can with the cell phone. So even just small things like that. If I don't put in the avenue in my street address, it's not getting to me. It's actually going to another, street. So basic level is, bringing in, insights or appending what you already have to better market to your audiences. There's things that, get left out or are not accurately put together, even understanding that these people live under the same household, or they might have a student away at college. That kind of stuff can help you in the marketing, and it might not be right there in your DMS.
What I'm really excited about is, I think at the Driving Sales Executive Summit, I want to say it was 4 years ago, we had some keynotes about big data, and everybody was talking about it like, oh, it's going to be so cool. But I think that at that time we had access to the data, but we didn't have the insight. We weren't able to leverage that insight like we do now. I think some of the technology is caught up with the data, and we're able to get those actionable insights. But let's talk about the creep factor. I mean, how can dealers make sure that a targeted message is not Big Brother or intrusive or just a little bit out there? I mean, what are some tips for making sure we don't get into the creepy zone with the data?
Well, I think there's a big difference between over messaging and constantly, blanketing your customers than doing it more strategically, more timely, and making them feel that the marketing message is educating them or is being used to help them in the process. You're definitely correct. There is a creep factor. I know just by sometimes I'm talking by my computer and then all my social media ads show exactly what I was talking about. But I think if we get away from that things are just not, popping up and it's not every day, all day, I think people are going to start to understand that, we're doing this in an effort to help them. It's not that we're just, sending them a marketing message from, ABC, car dealership down the street. It's that we understand them, we understand their habits, and we're doing it in a way that helps them. Everyone is busy. Everyone is, doesn't always understand everything that goes into, the fixed ops sides of, a dealership and what it takes to maintain a car. So the more that, the car servicing becomes an experience and that we're part of that experience from the start, I think the creep factor is going to start to diminish.
Yeah, you do make a good point. I mean, you alluded earlier that the omni-channel, part of that being omni-channel is consistent messaging online to offline, and you need to know who your customer is. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten postcards from a dealership to get an oil change on a car that I haven't owned for 3 or 4 years. That is definitely the opposite of this insight that you can gather if you know what they're driving and their habits.
Correct. And then you can start getting in front of them. If they haven't had the car for 3 or 4 years, well, what car did they trade it in for? What were they, was it leased? Was it purchased? And you can not everyone is going to be your, ideal customer to, market to. There are going to be customers within your DMS, outside of your DMS, that no matter what we do, how great the experience is, they're going to go somewhere else. And I think it's just more understanding those and using, the data that's available to understand, who our ideal customer base is and how we keep them coming back. And then also, becoming more targeted. If you haven't had that car for 3 or 4 years, the worst thing we can do is send you, a 10% off oil service for it.
Right. So this is the last question. If anybody else has questions, feel free to go ahead and type them in that questions box. I would think that there would be a ton of value for a dealership trying to identify who their customers are. You mentioned the Conquest side of it, but you also have the ability to get into and get insight on the customers that do business at your dealership. Their buying habits or their lifestyle. It seems like that this would be a good way for me as a dealership to kind of refine my brand and identify who my customers really are.
100%. And that's actually a really great way of starting. As we mentioned, there's a lot of different data sources out there. There's a lot of, not only data sources, but types of data, information out there. And if we start just layering it in with what we already have and understanding the customers in our DMS, we can start, having some fun with our marketing. It doesn't have to be, set it and forget it, owner retention programs. It can be, tailor-made for the needs of the dealership, for the customer. And I know we do, some Conquest for sales, and we choose to really not, scrub out the DMS when we say, you had these customers come in and purchase a vehicle. Because regardless if we sent them a communication and they were inside or outside of the DMS, that communication still drove them to come in and purchase a new vehicle. So it's not always about, gathering new customers. It's also about, keeping the ones that you have.
Right. So a couple more questions. Looks like here's one. Maybe you can help give us a little peek under the curtain. It said, aside from the data that you can get collected from the interaction with your customers, what are the most effective ways to gather this third-party data? Or maybe you can, to paraphrase a little bit, Affinitiv, what are some of the ways that you're compiling data from these customers that gives them this insight?
So I think, the number one thing that we are doing through Affinitiv, and I would stress that everyone should be doing, is always continuing to educate yourself. What you did yesterday is not always the solution for tomorrow. There are new data partners, there's new data, there's different ways of getting the data that are available every day. So the more that you stay educated about it, the better you're going to do. And then I think it's also having, the tools that are necessary to segment these audiences and build marketing around them. It's also, about being, consultative. It's not just, yes, everyone wants to do a Memorial Day campaign, but it's also, saying, yes, we can do a Memorial Day campaign, but let's segment the audiences here. Let's do it this way. And that's where some of the, analyzing and using past, data and some of the ROI reporting comes into hand. So it's a lot of things. It's one thing to get the data, but it's really, the tools that you have, the sources, and, how you analyze it.
Okay, last question. I'm assuming that this is anonymized. This data is anonymized enough to be privacy compliant. Anything a dealer needs to worry about with privacy?
Yes, I will say that. I mean, if I can't speak for every partner out there, but a true partner is going to make sure that they are doing everything necessary to adhere to the privacy standards, adhere to, limitations, laws that are out there. That's a job in itself. And I think when some dealerships want to bring these services in-house, they can absolutely do it. I mean, anyone can deploy an email, anyone can go have a email campaign deployed by the data. But when you start looking at how many, compliance things are out there and privacy acts, that's when it gets daunting. And, picking a true partner for your marketing is going to make sure that you never, fail to comply.
Right. Well, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening. Like you and I had a little bit of a conversation before we started on that. This is an exciting time to be in automotive. We're finally seeing convergence of all of these things we've been talking about for the last 5 to 10 years are here, and it's going to drastically change the way cars are sold and serviced and the way that we communicate with our customers. And I think this is a big part of it. Once again, thank you very much. We will be posting this recording on the community. So if you have any, you missed a couple of screenshots or you need some more information, we will get it there. Obviously, you can see that we have some contact information for Courtney if you have any questions that she can answer directly. We'll also be sending this out in an email so that you'll be able to access the recording. And once again, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you got some insight that you can use and apply in your stores. And we hope to see you on future webinars. Thanks again, Courtney.
Thank you.